All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining us today as we celebrate the 75th anniversary of Everglades National Park. So give a big happy birthday to Everglades National Park. We'll give everyone just a few more minutes to get settled, but let's go ahead and get started. So as we mentioned, today is a very special day because 75 years ago, on December 6, 1947, the United States government set aside 1.5 million acres of protected land for what is now known as Everglades National Park. So tonight, we're going to learn a little bit more about the history, the people, the park, and the restoration of what makes this park so special and how it came to be. So just a brief introduction. My name is Kim Gooch, and I'm the Digital Marketing Coordinator for the Everglades Foundation. You might recognize me as I've done a few of these families for Everglades before, and I was in Central Florida as the previous Everglades Literacy Program Coordinator. We're also going to be joined tonight by a very special park ranger guest in just a little. Just a few housekeeping rules. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A. Someone from the team will be able to answer that question for you. And we're also going to be utilizing polls for trivia questions throughout the evening. If you're going to take any pictures, be sure to follow and tag and share with us on social media. You can see our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages on the page. All right, we have our first trivia question, and that is, what year was Everglades National Park established? I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. I'll give you a hint. If you do the math, it was 75 years ago today. All right, I see we have a lot of answers coming in. Great job. Is it A, 1950, B, 1947, C, 2000, or D, 1975? I'll end the poll and share the results. All right, we had 83% have the correct answer. It was 1947. That was 75 years ago today. Great job. All right, we have another poll to share. Another trivia question. This one is, who is known as the grandmother of the Glades? Is it Julia Tuttle, Susan B. Anthony, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, or May Mann Jennings? I see lots of answers coming in, so thank you all for your participation. We'll give everyone a few more moments. These are all very important ladies in history. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So the correct answer is C, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. She was a former journalist for the Miami Herald and wrote the famous book, The Everglades, River of Grass, which was published the same year that the park was established. She helped people realize that the Everglades was a special place worth conserving. So great job, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing. So speaking of special places, there are currently 63 national parks in the United States, and the Everglades ranks number 27 on that list for the most visited this year in 2022. When you think of some of the more popular national parks like Arches, Grand Canyon, Yosemite, or Yellowstone like we have on screen, the beauty is obvious. But with the Everglades, it's a little more subtle and silent. The Everglades was the first national park set aside not for its beauty, but for its biological diversity. It was created to protect this unique ecosystem that only exists here in Florida. It's the largest subtropical wilderness on the North American continent. It has temperate and subtropical conditions, fresh salt and brackish water, and a multitude of habitats that create plants and animals and habitats for many of the animals that you see on screen. It also contains periphyton, which is the base of the food chain. It adds oxygen to the water, it stores water, and it provides habitats for other animals. The Everglades is also internationally significant. Not only is it a national park, it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, an International Biosphere Reserve, and a Ramsar wetland of international importance. The Everglades is also a sanctuary for birds, reptiles, and it provides a refuge for rare, endangered, and threatened species. It's also an incredibly important breeding habitat for hundreds of species of birds, as well as a really important migration corridor in North America. Not to mention, it helps to recharge the Biscayne Aquifer, which provides drinking water for millions of people living in South Florida. So something that I mentioned on the previous slide about the Everglades was its biological diversity or biodiversity. But what does that mean? So biodiversity refers to the variety of life in the world or in a particular habitat or ecosystem. It includes the totality of life and is often described as the richness of various species for which an ecosystem provides habitats for. The Everglades is a biodiversity hotspot, from the sawgrass marshes and dry pinelands to turtle grasses in Florida Bay. These different ecosystems support a wide range of plants and animals, some of which are only found in the Everglades. And it provides for us ecosystem services, these natural services that support life on Earth, such as filtering and cleaning the water, flood control, carbon sequestration, and aesthetic beauty. We're joined by a very special guest today, Yvette Cano. She is the Director of Education for Everglades National Park. Hi, Yvette. Thanks so much for joining us. Yvette was a teacher in Miami-Dade County Public Schools for 13 years, and she also worked for several years teaching other educators. As a native to South Florida, she loves to share her passion and connect with other neighboring communities to help them better understand and get excited about the Everglades and their role in the ecosystem. So she has a very special message that I'll play for you all today.
Hello and welcome to Everglades National Park. Happy 75th anniversary. My name is Ranger Yvette and I welcome you to your national park. Now when you think of Everglades National Park, I'm sure you think of alligators or maybe anhingas, maybe lots of water and sawgrass or some of these beautiful hardwood trees. Well, Everglades National Park, it's no secret, was set aside for its biological diversity, for just that, the plants and the animals, for living things. However, I challenge you, when you think of living things, what's missing from that? Of course, humans. Well, Everglades National Park also holds rich history of our native tribes, the Calusa, the Tequesta, the Miccosukee, the Seminole, all tribes that called Everglades National Park home. Now, if you're still wondering, why is this national park so special? I have something else to talk to you about. Let me introduce you to my friend, Periphyton. You might wonder, what in the world is this? Well, this is a whole bunch of different types of algae. It's essential. We call it Everglades gold. It's the bottom of the food chain. Oh, and wait for it. Look at this. It holds tons of fresh water from the wet season to the dry season and starting all over again. And if you don't believe me, I challenge you. Do a little research. Read about it. That water that I just squeezed from the parafountain, that's the same water you and I drink every single day here in South Florida. Just bizarre. All of that information and so much more to learn. I invite you. Come, explore, enjoy, have an adventure in your national park. I can't wait to see you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Yvette from the National Park. What an exciting video. So now we're going to take a little step back in time to before there even was the Everglades National Park and take a look at the historic Everglades. The Everglades has been around for over 5,000 years. Water once flowed slowly from the Kissimmee River, which emptied into Lake Okeechobee. The water then overflowed the southern rim of the lake, moving very slowly in those low-lying lands until ultimately reaching Florida Bay. The Everglades sheet flow covered almost 11,000 square miles, creating a mosaic of ponds, sloughs, cypress swamps, sawgrass marshes, and forested uplands. For thousands of years, it evolved into a finely balanced ecosystem that supported the biological diversity of the southern half of the state. Like Yvette had mentioned, the Everglades has a rich history when it comes to the native people, like the Calusa, Tequesta, Miccosukee, and Seminole tribes that called the Everglades home. Before the Spanish arrived in 1513, the Everglades was largely inhabited by the Tequesta and Calusa Indians. The Seminole and Miccosukee tribes affiliated with the Creek Federation were in the area as early as the 18th century. They were driven there through conflict and wars at the time. By 1913, there were many Seminole Indians living in the Everglades, and they made a living hunting and trading with settlers and raising animals. They also made villages in the hardwood hammocks and pinelands of the Everglades, and they were federally recognized as the Seminole Tribe of Florida in 1957. Those who kept more traditional ways had settlements along the Tamiami Trail and spoke the Miccosukee language. They were federally recognized as the Miccosukee Tribe of Indians in 1962. Today, there are still thousands of tribe members living in central and southern Florida, as well as some who live in modern huts on Everglades grounds. They work to preserve their culture and the rich history of the Everglades. We'll be sure to share more information about Native people in our resource packet. There was many changes that came to the Everglades. As we saw, humans are deeply interwoven into the history. Native people existed and thrived for centuries in the area, and as South Florida's population began to grow, various groups and people navigated through uncharted territory to make it home and exploit its natural wonders at times. People often hunted in the Everglades unchecked, and as early as the 1880s, they started to kill hundreds of alligators, otters, and raccoons. In the 1880s, it's estimated that 5 million birds were killed for feathers for women's hats. They sold them for the price of gold. More in the 1880s, these settlers and developers began to view the Everglades as a useless swamp with no value unless it could be drained, developed, and cultivated for agriculture. They did not know the ecological and economic value of the Everglades at this time, so it really was not done with malice. They were looking to build the economy and the industry of Florida. Developers started digging drainage canals, which took place again without this understanding of the dynamics of the ecosystem. We still see the effects of an altered Everglades ecosystem today. One of the reasons why Everglades restoration is so important and something that we work towards. We work to restore that southerly flow from Lake Okeechobee down to the Everglades. Did you know women created the precursor to Everglades National Park? In fact, president of the Florida Federation of Women's Clubs, May Mann Jennings, helped to acquire the unprotected lands in 1905 for the Royal Palm State Park. This Florida Federation of Women's Clubs was established, and they organized around issues such as prohibition, education, voting rights, rights for the ill, and conservation. During this time in 1905, the club women worked in campaign drives, lobbied legislators, and appealed to the National Audubon Society for assistance. Through their strenuous efforts, funds were raised to purchase the 960 acres of land, and Royal Palm State Park was dedicated in 1916. You might recognize the name because it's still there, and you have the Royal Palm Information and Visitor Center in the Everglades. Royal Palm served as the nucleus for Everglades National Park and is still among one of the most frequently visited areas in the park. Now, there still was a long journey ahead to Everglades National Park. Landscape architect Ernest F. Coe loved to explore the Everglades and was shocked to learn of rare birds being killed or rare orchids being taken from the park. He feared that many animals would face extinction if something wasn't done. Not long after Royal Palm, the idea for a national park for the Everglades was pitched in 1928. Ernest F. Coe established the Tropical Everglades National Park Association. In 1934, Congress was persuaded by all of the members of the association to designate the Everglades, but it took another 13 years to acquire the land before finally becoming a national park. Someone else who was very instrumental in helping the Everglades become a national park is Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. During this time, many people saw the Everglades as a useless swamp, but her book, The Everglades River of Grass, helped to convince people that the Everglades was a special place worth conserving. Marjorie moved to Miami in 1915 and started working at the Miami Herald. She was ahead of her time, and many of her editorials focused on Florida's increasing problem of rapid commercial development. Her famous book, The Everglades River of Grass, was published in 1947 after spending 5 years researching what little science existed about the vast Everglades ecosystem. She soon understood the profound importance in the ecology of South Florida and wanted to share it with the world. So this book also turned 75 years old this year. And believe it or not, even in 1947, this book sold out its first printing within a month. This book galvanized public interest in protecting the Everglades against development and helped secure it as a national park. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas dedicated her life to preserving and protecting the Everglades. She would advocate for the Everglades to anyone who would listen, and she lived to be 108 years old. Finally, on December 6, 1947, Harry S. Truman, president at the time, Ernest F. Coe, and 57-year-old Marjorie Stoneman Douglas dedicated America's newest national park, the first time federal land was set aside for its abundance of diverse plant and animal species rather than for its scenic value. Here are no lofty peaks seeking the sky, no mighty glaciers or rushing streams. Here is land, tranquil in its quiet beauty, serving not as the source of water, but as the last receiver of it. To its natural abundance, we owe the spectacular plant and animal life that distinguishes this place from all others in our country. Another exciting piece of history to share is the first day cover artwork from the dedication ceremony. A first day cover is the envelope that carries the newly issued postage stamp. These were created on December 5th, 1947 in Florida City, one day before the dedication of the park. You can see that these stamps really captured some of those beautiful illustrations of the plants, animals, habitats, and people of the Everglades. In its first year, the Everglades National Park had only 7,482 visitors. Now, over 1 million people visit the Everglades every year, and we encourage you to visit the park as well. So speaking of visiting the park, we have a very special visitor, as we saw, Yvette Cano, and she's going to help us answer some questions tonight. Hi, Yvette. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and happy 75th anniversary, Everglades National Park.
Yes, a very exciting day indeed. So a great question to start with is, what is your role at Everglades National Park and how long have you been there?
Kim, I am lucky to say that I am the Director of Education at Everglades National Park, and I have been with the park for 12 years.
That's awesome. So what made you want to work in the Everglades National Park or even in a national park in general?
You know, I grew up here in South Florida. My family is Cuban, so I was the first born here in Miami. And as a Hispanic female, it is not common to know or understand that national parks are places to work at. Um, so I never thought of it as a place for me to work. As a matter of fact, like you mentioned, I actually was a teacher first in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. As a role as a teacher, I actually participated in all of the programs that we have available for our students. I would bring students camping and I would bring students to participate in day programs. I would help write curriculum. And all the time as a teacher, I never imagined that I would see myself in what we call the gray and green, right? In our uniform. Well, luckily, my previous boss recruited me and begged me to come on board. And after some hesitation, because it was always too far, I decided to give it a shot. And I am so lucky to have happened upon this opportunity because this truly is a dream come true for me.
It looks like it. I mean, what a beautiful place to work at. And, imagine, that being your job site every day. How fun is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And even just speaking of the Everglades, right? So you're in it, right? You've learned so much about it. What do you think makes the Everglades so unique and so different from other places in the world or even other national parks?
Absolutely. Kim, you know, the Everglades is really difficult to understand, and you alluded to some of that in your presentation. There are national parks all over the United States, and you spoke about the 63 national park sites, but there's actually 423 national park sites, including monuments and trails and roadways and homes, that a lot of these places you get to and you either read the history or you see the site itself, and you really understand why it's preserved and protected. You really get it. You really don't need a park ranger or someone to hold your hand to explain it, right? It's obvious. Well, Everglades National Park, I like to say it whispers. It's not in your face. It's really different. So much so I feel, and I feel like I can say this because I'm a Miami girl. Miami's really different. We don't follow the rules. Well, our national park doesn't either. Living things are incredible. And to understand it, unlike Miami, it's not in your face. You really have to go and figure it out and have someone hold your hand. And I love that about our national park because when you do discover those whispers, when you finally listen, then you're hooked. And every day is completely different because of how dynamic life is. You never know what to expect. And that's so much fun and so exciting.
I really like that comparison then and the juxtaposition between Miami and the Everglades, right? They're so close and yet so far and so different. So that's a really unique way of thinking about that. Thank you. So just learning about the Everglades history and what you've picked up on the job, is there any sort of piece of Everglades history that really speaks to you the most?
Absolutely. So within the boundaries of Everglades National Park, we have the Nike Missile Base, and it is relics of the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this site was actually closed in 1979, which is not that long ago. As a matter of fact, many people who live in South Florida remember and lived through the Cold War. And one of those individuals is my parents. So when I started to learn about the Nike Missile site, because that is one of the sites we provide educational opportunities, I had the opportunity to sit down with my dad and really ask him questions to walk me through that time in history. And it was such an emotional and wonderful connection that I was able to make with my own culture, and that time based on what my parents lived through. So that site, every single time that I'm there, I get goosebumps. It really just takes me back to a time in history, that my parents were able to witness, and I could then tell the stories to students. So that really is a powerful site for me.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I mean, that's a huge part of Everglades history. And I mean, even what we're talking about today in the presentation, we're just barely scratching the surface. There's so much that you can't cover in a 45-minute presentation, let alone, a whole day in the park. So, definitely anyone who's watching this, right, we encourage you to learn more. There's so much to learn, so much to visit at the park. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Thank you. So speaking about visiting the park and, different opportunities, I know we have a lot of parents on the Zoom today. I know we have a lot of teachers and students. So what are some opportunities for families, for students, maybe for kids out in the park? What are some of the programs that you offer?
Yeah, so we do have our traditional field trips, that students can, or teachers rather, can sign up for. And there's a variety. I will definitely provide those links that you can share with the audience. So if people are interested, they can look at those opportunities. We have teacher workshops, and we have virtual opportunities. We have just a huge slew of programs that students, teachers, and families can participate in the park. One of our public opportunities is our Junior Ranger Day that actually happens in late February, and I'll provide the audience with that date. It's open to the public, and students come and become junior rangers. It's such an exciting day. It's at both locations down south near Florida City and on the northern boundary at Shark Valley, two very unique opportunities for students. Additionally, there are a number of fee-free days available where you can participate and come in free of charge. And speaking of free of charge, any fourth graders out there? Well, my fourth graders have a free National Park pass for the duration of their fourth grade life, all the way through August before school starts again. And they can obtain those passes on Every Kid Outdoors website. They can do it through their teachers, they could do it through their families, and that grants them entrance to the national park for them and their entire family. The cool part is if the kids aren't on board, the family's not allowed, so the kid always has to come. Win-win for my fourth graders. So there are a number of opportunities, and then of course, if you look at our website and you want to canoe or kayak or simply go on a hike, all of those opportunities are highlighted on our website, and featured on the days and the times. And we are just coming into season, which is wonderful. That means that all of our programs are up and running and available for everyone to participate.
That's awesome. Yes, thank you so much. And like Yvette had mentioned, we'll definitely be sure to send out a resource packet with all of the links and the websites and the information that Yvette is talking about today, as well as we'll have the recording of the webinar on our YouTube channel. We had a really great question in the chat. I'll go ahead and share. It is, how do you become a junior park ranger or a junior ranger?
Yeah, so you can either participate on Junior Ranger Day, or you can go on your own. If you go on your own, you're going to pick up a Junior Ranger booklet at a visitor center. Any of the visitor centers, they all have one. They have one for junior deputy rangers, which is like 5 and younger. And then they have a second one for kids who are a little older. You complete the activities, and then you find yourself a park ranger that will swear you in, and you have to promise to protect and educate. And then students receive their very own badge, just like mine. You know what the coolest part about it, Kim, is? If you decide that you want to visit 10 national parks, you can become Junior Ranger in all 10. If you want to visit 400, you can become Junior Ranger in all 400. So it is a wonderful opportunity that is available in all national park sites.
Wow, that is a really cool opportunity. Yes, thank you so much for sharing. And Oh man, I have so many ideas. I wish I could go back and be a junior ranger, right?
Well, you certainly can. We don't discriminate based on age.
Oh,
All
great, look
junior
at
rangers
that.
are welcomed.
Perfect. Well, that's great. I think that really ties into our next question of what advice would you give someone visiting the Everglades National Park for the first time?
Absolutely. A lot of times people will visit Everglades and wonder, what is there to, okay, I'm here, now what, right? Like, what is there to do here? Do a little research. See what you feel most comfortable doing. There are a number of opportunities, from the very easy, basic paved trails. There's bike riding. You can ride on trams. There's a wet hike that's a little bit more advanced and adventurous, but amazing. There are canoeing or kayaking opportunities. There's also opportunities on boats that are driven by the concessionaire. So there is a wide array of opportunities. Everything really is spelled out on our website. If you simply Google Everglades National Park, you're going to see the .gov website and just look for things to do, and that'll really spell it out. Additionally, time of year. I already mentioned it, but I'll say it again. This is the time of year to go from now until about Easter, when the weather is cooler, it is not as hot. There are practically no mosquitoes. This is the most comfortable time of year to visit the park. So I encourage you, get out there, get out to our national park, because this is it. This is a fun time. Go camping. It's lovely in the evenings. It's nice and cool. So timing, and make sure to look up opportunities of what you feel most comfortable doing.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I think that really kind of answers to everyone. And it's always important to think and remember that the Everglades is so big. You can enter it near Miami, Homestead, you can travel down to Flamingo or even on the Gulf Coast side. So it's really cool that you're able to experience the dry habitats, the wet habitats. You can bike, hike, canoe, kayak, camp. I mean, there's so many different ways to explore the Everglades. So that's really cool. We had another really great question in the chat. It is, do you have internships available, maybe for high school students or for college students or any sort of, career opportunities for the future?
Absolutely, Kim. What a great question. And I always love to talk about this because, again, I came into the national park, I happened into this profession, but now there's amazing opportunities for our youth. Once they graduate high school, there are internship opportunities that are available in all facets of the national park. So I obviously love children and love to talk. So I am an interpretive park ranger in education, and there's opportunities in this field. But if you have a child or a student who's really interested in IT, well, guess what? We have an entire very big IT division that hires interns. Or if you're interested in social media or public affairs, there's interns there. There are also interns in the budget world of the park and administration of the park. So there are a number of internships that are available through the Greening Youth Foundation. Again, I'll say that again, Greening Youth Foundation. Also internships in the summer through organizations like the Latino Heritage Internship Program or the Fish and Feathers Internship Program. Also Mosaics in Science program. So if you Google internships in national parks, we are not the only holders of those internships. If you live someplace else that you have another national park that's closer, even here, we have Everglades and we have Biscayne side by side, who both offer internships. So there are internships in all of the national parks. You just have to look them up. And the best part, Kim, is that these students get paid. Some of them even include housing, which is unbelievable. They're great opportunities. And this really offers an opportunity to learn about the national parks, as well as understand the hiring process in the federal government, which can be a bit cumbersome.
Yeah, that is such a great answer. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And thank you to our participant for asking that in the chat. a lot of students are starting to really focus on kind of those next steps. We have our Everglades champions, we have our high school leadership program, and so it's great to see, what's next. There was one more question in the chat I thought was really interesting, is to be a park ranger, what did you study in school, or what would you recommend maybe someone going into that field?
So it's very different based on all of the national parks, right? So let's take Everglades, for example. My background, of course, is education. I have my teaching degree. However, I did on my own a lot of research, and I actually obtained several certificates in our natural fauna and flora just because I had a passion for it. And then I also obtained a certificate in uh, teaching in wilderness,
Mhm.
again just because I had a passion for it, and all that lined me up for my position. But if you're going to come into a national park that has more of a historic background and you really love history and that's your thing, well then of course you may want to look into that field. I will say that there is a very diverse a set of backgrounds of all of the park rangers that become park rangers. You do need a degree to start, at minimum an AA, or equivalent experience to get started as what we call a GS5, and that's kind of an entry level park ranger. Um, but then again, if you want to go into IT, right, you want a background in computers, it really just depends on what avenue you want to seek. I'm happy to answer questions specifically, and folks can definitely reach out to me if you're looking into a specific field. I am more than happy to help guide you or connect you with a park ranger on my staff that did a particular track.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so great to see that there's so many different avenues, right? There's not one track that gets you there. It's all about the experience and right, your passions and really what you're interested in. And I love that, there's not one right answer to that. So thank you. And I think we'll go ahead with our last question. So this one is kind of a fun one, right? So, what is your favorite part about working at Everglades National Park? What do you most look forward to with your job?
Kim, if you would have asked me this question 12 years ago, the answer would have been very different. And even just 5 years ago, but as we've seen the earth changing and we've seen the effects of climate change, and myself being a mom of two young girls, what gives me the most satisfaction is opportunities to have conversations, to have hard conversations that really this uniform allows me to have. Conversations about, how do we preserve and protect our planet for future generations, and enabling people to know that they can make a difference, that there is still hope, that even though some of these things that are happening are really sad and scary, we still can make a difference. And really, the power of that difference lies in the hands of our youth. And you have no idea how happy that makes my heart, because, a lot of times adults, we dismiss our kids. We're like, they're just kids. No, the power of our youth and the power that they can harness in technology itself. I'm going to give you an example, right? There was not long ago the turtles that had issues with the straws and the plastic and the microplastics in the ocean. That all came to light because kids started to pay attention, and there was a huge social media movement. And in just the last couple of years, folks have now stopped using single plastics. It's not a thing anymore. It's not cool, right? And, it's unbelievable of just those small things that our youth can do. And I believe that what they have at their fingertips with technology, I see the future in that, right? How can we harness the CO2 in the atmosphere and put it back in the ground and make healthy soils? They have that ability, and that truly gives me hope for our planet, for our future, and selfishly, even for my daughters, right? It's really exciting to know that they have that power. And I am lucky to facilitate those conversations, to challenge them to think outside the box. Yeah, I'm really lucky to be in that position. So that's my favorite part.
Wow. I mean, what a great answer. That was amazing. And it's so true. I mean, the future is in, youth and students and what you're learning now and what you can do in the future. And it is so inspiring to see what can be done and, just to be able to witness that. So thank you so much for sharing. Well, that was our last question and definitely a great question to end on. So thank you so much, Yvette. We really appreciate you coming to the presentation tonight. And like we mentioned, we'll be sure to share all of the resources and some of the links and some of the ideas that you shared and with the rest of the group that's here tonight.
Awesome. Kim, thank you so much for having me. It truly has been an honor and a pleasure. And what a great way to close out our birthday. So thank you very, very much.
Yes, thank you, Yvette. And for fun, we'll end with just a few more trivia questions. So I hope some of my friends were paying attention today. So trivia question number 3 is, how old is the Everglades ecosystem? So not just the national park. Is it 10,000 years, 5,000 years, 1,000 years, or 100 years? All right, I see that almost everyone has participated. Some great answers coming in. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll, share the results. So the Everglades ecosystem is about 5,000 years old. So the park is 75, but the ecosystem has been around for over 5,000 years. So great job, everyone. And our last question is, what makes the Everglades so special as a national park? Was it the first park to be set aside for biology? Was it the first tropical wetland park? Is it the only place where crocodiles and alligators can exist together? Or all of the above? All right. So great job, everyone, for participating. The correct answer is all of them, right? It is the first park to be set aside for biology, the first tropical wetland park, the only place where crocodiles and alligators can live side by side, and of course, all of the above. So as Yvette mentioned, even after 75 years, the park is still just as important, and we hope that you get a chance to visit someday. It's your national park, and it belongs to all of us. And our job is to continue to teach about it and protect it for future generations to come. So here are just a few spots where you can visit the park. You have the Shark Valley Visitor Center, the Gulf Coast Visitor Center, Ernest F. Coe Visitor Center, and the Flamingo Visitor Center. So again, in the resource packet that we send you, we'll be sure to share some information about these places. Like we said, you'll get that resource packet in about a week with email at the link to the YouTube presentation, as well as some of the links of the information that we talked about today. We encourage you to learn more. The more we know, the more we can share with others and to protect and restore the Everglades. And we want you to get outside, find your park and get out and explore, whether it's the Everglades or somewhere else. Just some background information about us. We're the Everglades Foundation, a nonprofit environmental organization that works to protect and restore America's Everglades through science, advocacy, and education. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. Feel free to email us at info@evergladesliteracy.org, or if you take any photos, be sure to follow and tag us on social media. And I'll end with a quote from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. There are no other Everglades in the world. They always have been, one of the unique regions of the earth, remote, never wholly known. Nothing anywhere else is like them. So happy 75th anniversary, Everglades National Park. Happy birthday. Thank you, Yvette, for joining us today. This was such a fantastic way to get to meet and learn a little bit more about the park and your role. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Yvette.